can't sleep. This thing about you are what you believe is really shaking me up. I've been saying this really for years. I mean, it should be obvious. But sometimes you can say a thing and you yourself don't really know what you're talking about. I've known for years that we program our own souls. My pastor used to put it this way. He used to say, decisions create environment, not environment decisions. You are what you think. That's Proverbs 23:7. Who doesn't know that verse? But it wasn't until I heard 25-Net 4 and just yesterday, moderate Calvinists keep harping on something I myself made videos on about Romans 10:17. Faith comes by hearing. Faith comes by hearing. What does that mean? And of course, 25-Net 4 and moderate Calvinists were harping on that. This is how you get the faith, by hearing. Yeah. That's actually what happens. Because your soul is designed to hear and decide, hear and decide, hear and decide. That's what you're constantly doing. You're hearing your own thoughts, your own reactions, you're hearing other people's thoughts, their reactions, and you're constantly making decisions about what you hear. You can't hear anything without deciding on it. You're deciding to hear more, you're deciding to hear less, you're rendering some kind of judgment call on everything I'm saying right now. Alright? You have to render that judgment call in order to hear the next thing that's going to come along. It's like in computer programming. Something comes in, and you have to deal with that input in order to root it. You're rooting input all the time. So faith does come by hearing. When you're a baby, you hear your mother, and you, even as a baby, with no vocabulary, you're still choosing. You're still making choices about that voice that you're hearing, even if you can't articulate it. Even if you don't know that's what you're doing. That's how your soul operates. It operates on faith. You're believing, you're disbelieving. You're partly believing, you're suspending your belief. Okay? So faith only comes by hearing. You don't have a decision to make if you're not hearing anything. Now, the flip side of that is, if as the hearing comes in, you reject it, and the thing that you're hearing is true and you call it false, or you only accept part of it, maybe because you don't understand, to the extent you're not admitting the part that you don't accept, you're losing the ability to hear. So now, one of the verses that I quoted in the previous video was in Isaiah. And we all know it. It's in several places in Isaiah and elsewhere. Hearing, they don't hear. Seeing, they don't see. That's the explanation. They hear and they refuse to hear. That's what Paul was talking about in Romans 10. Because the whole context of Romans 10 is Deuteronomy 30. Alright? Hearing, they don't hear. Seeing, they don't see. And just like anything else, if you refuse to hear and you refuse to see, just like if you refuse to exercise, you gradually lose the ability. This is frightening to me. Faith comes by hearing, and when the hearing turns off, so does the ability to comprehend. Now, the reason I wanted to make this video is a really important one. It's not so much to pick on somebody else we know that isn't hearing. It's to diagnose it in them and in ourselves. And I ended the last video that way, but I didn't spend enough time on it. And the Lord was doing this, and now I'm catching on to how He did it. Remember the story about him and the Samaritan woman at the well? He makes this little foray with her. He says, if you had the water that I can give you to drink, you'd never thirst again. Well, obviously he's not talking about literal water. So he was testing whether she wanted to know more about it. If she asks him a question, that means her ears are open to hearing. He was testing for that. Because, he's talking to her in his humanity. He's not going up to his deity to learn the information. He's shielding himself from his own deity to ask that question. He has to will not to use his deity to learn. Otherwise it would be cheating. So he's testing her because he doesn't know. He's testing her volition to see if she wants to know. Or even if he did know, if you argued that he could just tell by the way she was that she wanted to know. Okay, but he still tests her. And she asks to know. Okay? And that's the thing to do here. That's where we can draw our key. Is when somebody asks you something, answer. Then what you want to do is see how well they understood your answer. And you'll know if their ears are closed, because when they come back to you with whatever it is they say, you can tell whether they understood what you said. Now, a person whose ears are closed will reverse what you say, will use it to accuse you, will reverse what the Bible says, will use it to accuse you. In other words, they'll use the Bible like a weapon. The person will, even another example that I learned recently, even if they ask you a question and they keep asking you, if you have to repeat it several times and you were already clear the first 2 times, by the time you get to the 3rd time you're repeating the same thing. Or if you gave them Bible verses and they just, like ignore the verses you gave. If those 2 kinds of things are evident, then they're blind. For the longest time I've been mistaking this. I've been thinking that when people reverse what you say, and when you give them evidence, they deny it as if it weren't there. I thought they were lying on purpose. They're lying, all right, but they don't know that they're lying. They actually don't know. And I was naive about it. I would say to them, well, you're lying, because I said this, and I said the cat is white, and now you're saying that the dog is black. I didn't say that, you're lying. But they actually don't know that they lied. To them, they didn't reverse what you said, because they read what you said in light of what they wanted it to be, and therefore what they accused you of in their minds is true. Just like the atheist is always saying, God is evil for allowing evil. They don't understand that God is the God of free will. And it's good truth, bad truth, any truth, because truth. And he's not going to shave freedom, even if it's bad. They'll never get that point. And they will just always run on the same thing. They always equate God with religion. There's no relationship between God and religion. Religion was invented by Satan. In Genesis 3, anybody sane can see that. But you're not sane if your ears are closed. So that's what you do. You test for whether their ears are closed. Just like the Lord did the Samaritan woman. When you see the ears are closed, which you'll see if what you said was clear, and they ignore it or reverse it, then you know to stop debating. You have to debate. Sometimes you have to be mean. Sometimes you have to be nice. It depends on the situation. Okay? Sometimes you have to walk away. And of course, when you do, those you're walking away from will always resent it. They'll always accuse you. You just have to ignore that. And indeed, the thing is what's the best use of your time in there? Now, the last thing, that's the most important, is that 99% of Christianity is completely apostate. And I think to myself, okay, if they're this bad, I can't be okay. So I look at how they behave. I look at how blind they are. I look at how unhearing they are. And I ask myself if I'm doing the same thing. So that's the biggest lesson to take out of it, is when you see that somebody is reversing what you say, is using the Bible like a weapon, isn't really learning from it. They're just using it to make themselves right. And then all the verses that contradict them, common sense that contradicts them, really obvious things that contradict them, they ignore it. And then you walk away and you ask yourself, Dad, am I doing the same thing?